Hi, and welcome to the Stefan Livera podcast focused on Bitcoin and Austrian economics. Today, I've got an interview with the CEO of Ledger, Pascal Gauthier. But first, a shout out for the sponsors. So firstly, check out Kraken, one of the world's leading Bitcoin exchanges. They're renowned for having a comprehensive security approach with a world-class team. You can buy and sell Bitcoin in just a few clicks. They've got a competitive fee structure, 24/7 support. They've got funding options so that you can fund your account with fiat or Bitcoin with low processing time. And recently, they've got Kraken Pro mobile app. So Kraken Pro delivers all the security and features you love about Kraken in a beautiful mobile-first design for advanced Bitcoin trading on the go. Note they've also got Kraken margin up to 5 times long and short, and there's also Kraken futures up to 50 times leverage. Kraken also have an OTC desk for those seeking more private, personalized service for large block trades. Go and sign up at kraken.com. This episode is also brought to you by Unchained Capital. Unchained Capital is a Bitcoin financial services company empowering their customers with unprecedented financial freedom and control. Unchained Capital make use of multi-sig, and they've got this clever approach called collaborative custody. And so Unchained offer a 2 of 3 vaults as a great option for those thinking how best to secure their Bitcoin for the long term. And you can use Trezor or Ledger. It's all in a beautiful web interface, and also, if you ever need to access liquidity without selling your Bitcoin, Unchained offer collateralized loans. So all Bitcoin is stored on-chain in dedicated multi-sig addresses. The Bitcoin is never rehypothecated, and you can share in the security by holding 1 of 3 keys in that scenario. I'm really impressed with Unchained. They offer excellent services. Check out my recent interview with Drew from the team. I think you'll enjoy partnering with them for your Bitcoin financial services. Learn more at unchained-capital.com. Check out givebitcoin.io. It's the easiest and safest way to get your friends and family into Bitcoin. Take it from me, I've given Bitcoin to people before and they lost it. They didn't know what they were receiving. That's why I see huge value in Give Bitcoin. Imagine if you could get people in and you could advance them to the point of being a hodler. Well, Give Bitcoin time locks that Bitcoin for 1 to 5 years and delivers them education from a world-class curriculum with input from other Bitcoiners such as Safedine, Matt Odell, Jan Pritzker, and others. I'm also an advisor with a small equity stake assisting with the curriculum. And you can also get Bitcoin as a present, so you can put it on your wish list for birthdays, Christmas, bar mitzvahs, graduation, weddings. I really think GiveBitcoin.io can have a positive impact on Bitcoin adoption and understanding, so I'm excited to have them as a sponsor. Last but not least, CipherSafe. They are producing the Cipher Wheel product. So, are you keeping your Bitcoin seed backed up in a way that's fireproof, waterproof, rustproof, petproof, and tamper-evident? If not, you need to look into Cipher Wheel. It's a new product, it's compact, it comes in a wheel shape, it masks the actual words of your BIP39 seed unless you actually open the tamper-evident seal. So if you're using a Trezor or a Ledger or a Cold Card, make sure you've got that seed backed up to help you in case your paper seed backup gets waterlogged or tampered or goes up in a fire. With the Cipher Wheel, you can help ensure that you or your loved ones have access to your Bitcoins if an accident occurs. And this product is available for pre-order. Check out the website ciphersafe.io. The link is in the show notes. So today my interview is with Pascal Gauthier, the CEO of Ledger, and he was also one of the first investors in Ledger. So for this interview, we talk about some of his background in Bitcoin, a bit of an overview on Ledger products, and a few other ideas such as privacy while using a Ledger hardware wallet, multi-signature, the question of Bitcoin only, and future directions with Ledger. So here is the interview. Pascal, welcome to the Stefan Livera podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So, look, Pascal, I'm keen to talk with you about what you're doing with Ledger and also just your story and how you got into all this with Bitcoin. Let's just start with a little bit about how you first got into all this.
Ooh, it's a long story. I got into all this because I did the first part of my career in online advertising, and it was great. But I mean, one way to put it is you're not really curing cancer. I mean, it's online advertising. And I had a great success with a company called Criteo that we listed at the Nasdaq. And after that, I was sort of soul searching and trying to figure out where to take my career and where to invest. And I was presented Bitcoin by Vences Cesares from Zappo, and I don't know. I thought he was an amazing speaker, and I thought that everything he said made sense. And so I decided mid 14 to invest time and money in the space. And I did several things, building my company called Kaiko that is run today by Anne Soubiran, which is a market data company. Invest in Ledger. I was actually the first investor in Ledger and the first board member because security seemed important and various other things that I did at the time. But this is how I got in.
Awesome. And so then what was it about Ledger that appealed to you and like the idea of investing in Ledger? Was it just a demand for hardware wallets, the security, the need for security in the space?
Oh no, because at the time, like, no, I mean, hardware wallet was merely a concept, and people were surprised how quickly I invested into Ledger. Actually, I'm the little story is that I'm the investor that sort of led the seed round, because I had like absolute faith into what Eric and Nicola and the team presented at the time. But it was mainly because of, first of all, betting in the space. So that was my mission at the time, and so therefore I needed to find like a few companies, and security seemed the most important thing. I mean, you have to remember that this was just after the Mongox incident, and so security and data seemed to me like the two missing pieces. The endpoint security seemed to be critically the missing piece of the ecosystem. And what Eric and Nicola presented is something that what we do today, but it's using the chip and pin technology to actually secure secrets, which is a French invention, and this is why chip and pin, that technology has been designed, like the hardware security has been designed, is to protect secrets. And so to me, it seemed like just a really good idea to apply that technology to protecting Bitcoin secrets and private keys. And so it was really a no-brainer. The team was great. The technology made sense. It was a French technology, so when you invest in a company, you try to figure out whether they have an unfair advantage, which seemed to be the case. And so all of this for me was a no-brainer at the time. For a few years after, it was a it was a no-brainer where you were like wondering whether you did a mistake or not, because the market was just so low. And so there was always a question of like, is a hardware wallet going to become a thing? But really, 2017, where everything picked up, I think we along Trezor and all the other guys in the space, we sort of created a new consumer electronic category, if you like, and that's very rare, and that's probably here to stay, actually.
Yeah, totally agree. I think this whole consumer category, if you will, of hardware wallets was very much started by companies such as Trezor and by Ledger. And because of that, I think most people, when they think of Bitcoin hardware wallets, they're thinking Trezor and Ledger as the first names in their mind. Can you give us just an indication of the size of Ledger's customers? I mean, I presume you would have a lot of retail level customers who've bought a Ledger device to hold their private keys.
Sure. I mean, there's one number that we share, and then the rest we keep to ourselves and to our users. But we sold to date above 1.5 million units of our products. So it's a big number. But more than that, actually, the other number that is really incredible is we shipped our product in more than 165 countries. And so that's a number that I like even more, because 1.5 million units of any consumer product, hardware consumer product, is a big number. But 165 countries is incredible. I think that it's a testimony that the crypto phenomenon is global. Because if you take any product, I mean, it's very rare that a company that young, on top of that, a company that young will ship so many products in so many different countries. And so that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a achievement, I think, because it's one of those things where you're trying to change the mindset for people. Where traditionally, if they're buying stocks, they've got they're not holding those stocks themselves, right? It's not like a bearer asset, whereas Bitcoin is a bearer asset, and so I think one of the challenges then is trying to articulate to holders why they should take their own power, take that key into their own possession. And so I think that's, hardware wallets are one way to really help achieve that. Has that been difficult for you to make that case to Bitcoin holders, or has that just have you found that that's been part of the ethos of the industry, or the way that people talk about Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I mean, the first phase of the development of the company is more like, we're part of the ethos of Bitcoin and crypto communities, and usually early adopters sort of understand, like they go through a path where they, you buy Bitcoin, and then once you have Bitcoin, you're like, shit, what do I do with that? And how to make sure that I'm secure. And so the next step, and you can actually see it online. Like there's so many blogs and so many things that have been written where by default, for your security, people or say get a hardware wallet, and and often get a ledger. And so I think that's the first phase. And I think for us now, the challenge is, going forward, like how do we make sure that we remain, important and relevant for consumers? And so because now you will have like a broader adoption of cryptocurrencies and or other type of tokens. And I think these technologies basically will succeed only if they're really secure and if the endpoint security is really secure. And so therefore, we will do a lot of efforts in 2020, educational efforts, but promotional, etc., just to make sure that the broader audience understand the need for security and understand the need for decentralization, because we also believe that the first phase of the industry has been really centralized on a few platforms, which is okay because sometimes you need simplicity. And it's true that decentralized value propositions were probably not as simple as centralized value propositions such as Coinbase, for example. But we believe that this is not the promise of decentralization. And so therefore, we're working hard to offer in 20 and 21 a decentralized product that will be as good as, if not better than centralized product, but with a decentralized way where users really own their private keys. I mean, not your keys, not your crypto, no?
Right. And one other aspect I was keen to ask about is hardware is difficult, right? So, and this is a very cyclical industry, right? Bitcoin, it tends to move in these big waves up and then big waves down. Has that represented a challenge? I mean, I'm sure it has represented a challenge for many Bitcoin businesses. How did Ledger deal with that very cyclical nature of the industry over the years?
It's a huge challenge because as well as this is happening, change is also happening. I was listening to an interview of Arthur Hayes from BitMEX, and he was asked the question like, "What has been the challenge for you recently?" And he says, "Change. Everything changes all the time, and so adapt to change in this industry is complicated." And it's true that this is also complicated with like ups and downs, because of course the ups and downs represent your revenue. So when everything keeps on changing and you need to invest in the change while your revenue is going up and down, this is the most difficult thing. So not only is difficult to adapt to a market that is going up and down, but it's even more difficult to adapt in that for that up and down as the market is changing so much, and you have the need or the obligation to invest so much into your product. But I mean, for a CEO and for a management team, it's a great. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's hard, but it's where you learn the most, probably. So for us, it's been a fantastic ride, to be honest. I think it's very challenging intellectually, and so we thrive in difficulty. So I prefer actually that market to the bull market that we had in 17, because it was just too crazy. I didn't really understand what was going on, and so for me, it was like, okay, well, everything goes up, and it seems to be crazy, but like we don't control it, like we don't really understand it. At least I would say that at the end of 19 for me and for the team here at Ledger, I think we had a great year because we better understand our business, we better understand our company, we better understand where we're going, and we think we have a plan for 2020 and beyond that's going to be really amazing.
Right. And one other point I wanted to touch on there was around lead time when you're making a new product, right? Because you could get really awkward timing where, let's say, it's like a crazy bull market, and then you're at that time there's you're coming up with a new product. But it takes time for that new product to land, and you don't want that to land during the down cycle. Did you have any trouble dealing with that kind of issue?
Not really. I mean, not the short answer is not really, and the longer answer would be to say, like the market moves quickly, but you have like and but you have periods of 3 to 6 months where you can sort of make your decision. So it's quick, but you still have like it's not 1 week over the next. And so therefore, for hardware production, typically, which is something that has huge impact on the company, you need sort of 3 to 6 months to make decisions, and or to 6 to 12 months to take a product to market. So I would say that there is nothing that hurt the company in the sense in that period, in the sense that we always had time to plan, and we planned everything carefully. And I think that everything we've done in the bear market has been somewhat successful. I mean, the Nano X, our new product, has been received very positively by the community. We sold a bunch. It's a great product. I mean, I'm using it every day. It's really good. I mean, the Nano S was good, but Nano X, I think, is the better version of the Nano S. So so far so good. We didn't break anything. Everything went. It was difficult, and it was a storm. It is still a storm, but we didn't break anything, and the ship is still sailing.
Right. Well, speaking of breaking things, I'd love to talk a little bit about the security aspects as well. So, listeners might know I recently interviewed Charles from the Ledger Donjon, who's also working with Ledger. Can you tell us a little bit from your perspective? What has it been like trying to maintain security standards on the product, and dealing with things like hacks and attacks that come up here and there?
Sure. Well, so Charles Guillemet that you're referring to is our Chief Security Officer and has been recently promoted to our Chief Technology Officer. He's our CTO. Now he's our CTO and CSO. And Nicolas Bacca, who is the founder and original CTO, is now our Chief Innovation Officer, so CIO. Look, security is at the core of everything that we do, and we again come from all of our engineers here. And if you speak to Charles or if you speak to Nicolas, they have security in their background, and they come from security companies themselves, and they've been working on that security issue for a long time. But again, we come from this chip and pin industry, so secure hardware industry, and so everything from the hardware perspective has to be secure. And as you know, probably Ledger has designed its own operating system that runs then into the secure hardware that either we design or that we buy off the shelf from vendors. So typically, what you see in the Ledger Nano S, I mean, it looks like a USB stick, but inside there is a secure element onto which we port our operating system. And that's what secure the private keys. And so for us, really, there's never a question about compromising on security, or do we lighten up security, for example, to make it more usable. And of course, when you work on security and you build a product for consumers, there's always this question: usability versus security. But for us, there's never we never compromise on this. We believe that we have the most secure product in the market today, but security is a cat and mouse problem in the sense that the bigger the industry becomes, the higher the fee the attackers are willing to pay in order to attack, and so therefore it's a never-ending problem where you always need to work on your security. So this is what we do, and as you know, so Charles, as Chief Security Officer, is at the head of something that we call the Donjon here at Ledger. So we have a hacker team internally that hacks our products, that hacks our partners' products, our competitors' products. And the aim of the Donjon is just to raise the security level of the industry overall, of Ledger products, of course, but security of the industry overall. So when we break a competitor's product, it's always in the spirit of, helping them do better. And so we have a responsible disclosure scheme that we apply. So of course we fix the problem first before we release anything. And it's really in the spirit of just the industry doing better for the consumers and for the enterprise and for everyone that's going to have that security endpoint issue.
Great. And does Ledger make use of a bug bounty program also?
Yeah, we do. Actually, I think you can find it on our website. Ledger. I'm just typing it as we speak, but bounty program Ledger. Ledger.com/bounty-program. It's there. It's all explained. And we're working with a lot of researchers actually outside of Ledger with the Ledger Donjon to work on various security issues. Again, it's a never-ending problem. Like, we think we're good right now, and we think we probably have the best security in the market, but it doesn't stop there. So we continuously invest into security and the future security of our products.
And I guess the other question is just around the secure element question as well. So I think this is a point where I think it came up with Charles as well, where we spoke a little bit about that, and Charles was making the point that essentially there are some components within within the secure element, which are closed source, but this is again just a difficult problem at this point. Do you have any views on where that is at this point, and where we would see that in the future?
Sure. I mean, we have to understand that I will tell you the way I learned this through my experience at Ledger, because of course, as you understand from the beginning of this chat, like my background is not in security, it's in advertising. And so in advertising, we didn't really care about hardware security. And so I had to learn sometimes the hard way of the implications of security and why, et cetera, et cetera. Most of security companies before Ledger do actually something that's called security by obscurity. So meaning they don't tell you anything, they don't open source anything, because obviously as soon as you try to open source, it's a much more difficult problem that you're trying to solve, because then you're showing what's inside, and because you're showing what's inside, so attackers can potentially use that against you. And so this is why, again, most security companies do security by obscurity. Ledger is very new. We are very new in our approach because we use the same kind of secure hardware, but we try to open it, but we only open it partially. But we try to open it as much as we can in order for third-party companies and third-party developers to be able to work on the operating system and develop new features on top of our operating system. So it's a very new approach, and typically with the dungeon, again, it's also a part of that approach where the dungeon is publishing a lot of the results. Usually, attack labs don't publish much, but we've attracted probably some of the best hackers that we have here, and some of the best researchers that we have here because of that open approach. Because it's a very frustrating world where you're finding great things, but you can't talk about it. And here at Ledger, our approach is to actually, find things, solve the problems, and then talk about what we found, just to share the knowledge with the community. So our approach with security is very open. However, there are certain things that we can't open, not so much because of Ledger and what we do, because we would prefer to work in a fully open manner. But there are some constraints that we have with our vendors, because they are part of things that actually are irrelevant to Ledger, but that would be part of the code that could be open, that then has to do with our vendor product. And so for reasons like this, we don't open all the way, because we have some constraints with vendors, which is okay and normal, and that's how the market works as well. So we're trying to push the limits of security, and but within boundaries that are sometimes that we have to obey, and happy to obey to those boundaries sometimes.
I appreciate that. Yeah, sure. And look, let's talk through just some of the key products then. So as you mentioned, we've got the Ledger Nano S, which is the original Ledger device. And more recently, we've got the Ledger Nano X, which is the Bluetooth-enabled newer device by Ledger. And then, as I see it, the main software is Ledger Live, which is the computer software to interact with the hardware wallet, and there's also a mobile phone version of Ledger Live. So could you just give us a bit of an overview on those different products? What are the main differences between them?
Yeah, so that's the consumer products that you just described. And so, well, the main difference between the Nano S and the Nano X is really Bluetooth connectivity, like you just said, but capacity. I think memory capacity. I think the market has evolved between like 2014 or early 15, where it was Bitcoin only, to today, and even the future, where we went from one coin to potentially like hundreds of coins or thousands of coins, etc. And so the Nano S was actually designed in already 2015, was released in 2016, and so it was designed with the needs of the time. And so with the Nano S, at any given time, depending on the firmware update that you're on, etc. But let's say that you can have between like 3 and 7 apps to run at one time on your Nano S, which means that you can use on Ledger Live between, like, let's say 3 and 7 coins without having to install or disinstall the apps. Because the Nano S or the Nano X, they work a little bit like a phone. So you have a capacity, and one coin is one app, so you can put only so many coins at the time as an app on your Nano S. So it's 3 to 7.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so people were asking for more capacity. So this is one of the reasons why we designed the Nano X, is because now with the Nano X you can have 100 apps to run on your Nano X at any time. so which is much bigger. Like it's a huge capacity. And so NanoS costs 59 and NanoX costs 119. So for less than double the price, you get, I don't know, something like 10x the capacity or 15x the capacity. So it's a really nice upgrade, and it's something that I've been asked for a long time.
I see. Yeah.
So that's the main difference between the two.
Right, I see. Yeah, and look, from I guess for me and my show, it's basically Bitcoin only, and my listeners are mainly interested in the Bitcoin only component of it. But I suppose there might be another security aspect of it, where perhaps from a minimizing the attack surface point of view, they might be interested to have a Bitcoin only device. Is that something you would explore?
Well, it's already the case. So I think there is a misconception about like how we do things, and also because sometimes we're being compared to the competition that has a different approach, actually different technological approach, which makes the Bitcoin only thing a thing. Where for us, it's already part of the DNA. It's already part of what we do. So this app system that I just described is actually the fact that all apps are segregated from each other because of the hardware security. Okay, and so therefore, if you only download the Bitcoin app, voila, your OS is Bitcoin only. You don't have to download another app, and we don't need to design an OS that is specific to Bitcoin because the job is already done. The problem with other vendors and some of competitors is that apps potentially could contaminate each other, etc. Which is not the case for us. And so therefore there is a need on the one side to develop like a specific OS for Bitcoin, when for us, it's already part of the value proposition that if you want to be Bitcoin only, that's fine, it works. And so we don't need to develop a specific operating system for that because it's already been designed for that.
Great, yeah. Look, I think there was some discussion I saw. This was a little while ago around that. I think that gets a little bit more into the technical weeds, though. So I think we can leave that for another time. But I'm also interested to discuss just any of your thoughts around Bitcoin privacy as well. So right now, if you set up using Ledger Live, obviously as part of the way the software works, you have to basically give your extended public key to the Ledger server to feed you what your addresses and your balances are. And I suppose, do you have any thoughts around ways that users can maintain more of their privacy? Is that something that you would try to build into a future product or software?
Yeah, I think it's something that's clearly on our roadmap for 2020. The difficulty with for Ledger is that there are some features that you're describing that are super advanced and are very important for like a subset of the broader crypto community, and then there is the mass market, and so therefore for us it's always a difficulty to understand what's the most important to do next, because you have features that are mass market and you have features that are equally important, let's say, philosophically speaking, but they're for like a smaller market. But it doesn't really matter to us whether the market is big or small. I mean, there are certain things that play into the philosophy of this industry, and so typically, privacy being one. This is top of mind for us, and it's definitely in the roadmap for 2020. I cannot give you any date, but I can tell you that it's an ongoing debate internally on how to do this and how to do this the best possible way, and there's a broader.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
So it's something that is definitely top of mind for us and live in 2020.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I appreciate again. It is there is this question of how do you get people to firstly hold their own keys. So it is at least an improvement on them leaving their coins with a custodian, where at least if they are self-custodying, even if with reduced privacy, well, at least that's better than not having their own keys, right? So I appreciate that. Yeah, and obviously appreciate that there is a question here around mass market versus what we might say the more advanced or hardcore Bitcoiner user might desire in the product. Another one as well, and maybe this will be a similar answer as well, is this question of multi-signature. So right now, I would love to be able to do multi-signature in a way where I could use different hardware wallet providers all as part of a multi-signature setup. So for example, I could have, a cold card and a Trezor and a Ledger all as part of a multi-signature setup. But right now that's a little bit more difficult to achieve with the Ledger devices. as I understand, one example might be if you try to perform a multi-signature transaction with Ledger today with some of the devices, it won't be easy to verify exactly on the device which address am I spending to, which how much am I spending, etc. I think. Sorry, to be clear, I think it will show the amount you're spending, but it won't necessarily be clear about the address component of it. So it makes it a little bit more difficult that we have to now trust the hot computer, which could be obviously have malware, and we obviously want to trust the hardware first. So do you have any views around multi-signature support?
Yeah, I mean, you said it in your introduction. You probably have the same answer than the one before. Multi-signature is also part of the 2020 roadmap. It's not something that let's say that it's not something that we've overlooked in 19, but 19 has been a challenging year. We're very busy working on so many things, and also we've scaled our engineering team a lot. I've got right now 40 engineers that I'm recruiting as we speak, and so this is the need of like new features and new coins, and so I know you guys are probably Bitcoin only, but there are many other projects in the world right now that are going on where we need to pay attention because we don't want to become obsolete because we don't support the latest tech. So the need for tech support is so huge that sometimes it's very difficult to know from which angle and which problem to take first. And we've achieved a lot in 19. I mean, Ledger Live didn't really exist at the beginning of 19. We didn't have the Nano X, etc. So actually 19 was a very important year for Ledger, and there are many things that were achieved. Some of the things were not done. So typically multi-sig is one, but R&D and Nicolas, they're working on this right now. And again, that's we will do better at that in 2020 for sure.
Great, yeah, and look, I think there is potentially a good benefit there for a lot of the hardware wallet manufacturers, because then if they're supporting multi-signature, it becomes easier for there to now be a need for users who were previously just doing single signature, single hardware wallets. Well, now they can use multi-signature, and then they will need obviously multiple devices to help achieve that. So there's potentially an angle there.
But there is that. But to be honest, of course we're here to do business and sell stuff. But I think multi-sig for me and having a better multi-sig approach, I think it's important because security is one thing, but governance is another thing that we bring, and it's typically what we're doing with our enterprise product is security and governance. So multi-signature enforced on the hardware is actually something that we do, but more for the enterprise today. And so the need for governance for the consumer is actually really big, and so it's it's something that is really, that's why it's also top of mind for us in 2020, because users, it's great to have your private keys, it's great to have them on Ledger, but you become the single point of failure, meaning that to seal your coins, the only thing I have to do is to threaten you with a knife or with a gun. You type your PIN, we do one transaction, and I wipe out your crypto. And so this is a serious threat. And so, when we think about security, we think about security overall, not just the hardware security. And then, the personal security of the user is none of our concern. Actually, it is. This is why when we design the enterprise product, we design it specifically with in mind physical threats to the user. Because if you design an enterprise product, but the only thing that you can do to break the bank is just to kidnap the general manager of the bank, then your security product is not great. And so we know how to do that, and we've done it from the enterprise world first, and we're bringing it to consumers. But it is a problem, and this is why we're thinking about that. It's more because of security rather than selling more hardware. And of course, if the consequence is that we sell more hardware, we'll take that too. But security is at the core of everything we do, and that's a security issue.
Yeah, totally fair enough then. One other question around arguably security as well is the discussion where individuals who would like to secure their Bitcoin in more secure ways try to find ways to air gap their keys away from the hot computer. And some of the ways that people talk about this is using, say, micro SD cards or potentially a QR codes as a way to sort of move that or shuttle the transaction back and forward between the computer and the hardware device where the private keys are living. Do you have any thoughts around the use of some of those air gapping methods, and potentially also any thoughts around PSBT, partially signed Bitcoin transactions?
Well, these are advanced questions. So, and I'm, Charles or Nicola would be better people
Sure.
to have on your show to discuss these issues. The Look, we've designed the product so you don't really need to air gap it. I think when it comes to security, there is always a question of trust. Do you trust your security vendor, and do you trust what Ledger says or not? But our product is the only certified product in the market. So with security, you can say what you do. You can actually give means for the users to verify that what you say, and what you do is true, which is the case for Ledger. And then you can go one step beyond that and have your product security reviewed by an attack lab, which and that will give you a certification and the certification is a stamp to say, hey, the Ledger product actually does what it's supposed to do, or what it says that it does. And actually, if you take the Nano S and the Nano X, these are to my knowledge, the only two hardware wallet products that got a certification to date. And I'm not talking about the certification of the secure element, because of course the secure element is certified, but that's by a vendor. I'm actually talking about the product itself, the Nano S and the Nano X. The entire product has been certified by the ANSSI, which is a French attack lab. It's a French public attack lab. It's very well known. It has an amazing reputation, and both of our products are certified. And so therefore, the products do what they say they do, meaning like you can connect them to your computer without the risk of losing your private keys. So now, the air gap discussion for me, it's a bit dogmatic discussion. The way I understand it is like, maybe I don't really trust. I never want it to be connected, so I want it to be offline. But actually, I don't think there's a need for that. But I'm going to stop here, because that's probably a longer discussion that you should have with Nicolas and Charles at Ledger, because then it becomes an expert discussion. And I'm a CEO of a security company, so I understand what we do, but I'm no expert. But on that question, that's what I would say. And PBST, it's something that we support. At Ledger, the market is moving fast, and the market has many needs for features. And so the problem that we have is either we do everything ourselves, and then it becomes slow. And already you've asked me like several questions on several things, and it's like, what do you do here? What do you do there, etc. And we will deliver in 20, but we haven't delivered in 19. That's because there are so many things that we need to do. And so one of our approach it's to keep the system open. And as you know, you can use with the Nano S or Nano X, you can use Ledger Live, but you can also use Electrum or other third-party software. And sometimes those third-party software offer features that Ledger doesn't offer. So typically, multi-sig, you can use Electrum to do multi-sig with your Nano, and PBST is the same. Actually, you can. We have a proxies through HWI. Actually, there is a GitHub. github.com/bitcoin-core/HWI. And so we support PSBT through a third party, and we can do better in 2020. But this integration functions, and for someone who would want that feature enabled.
Yeah, great, and thank you for that, for giving us a comprehensive response on those. And look, for some further in-depth discussion, maybe I can get Nicola on and talk to him about some of those other points. Also, I was curious to ask about your thoughts around vendors and sort of retailing of the product. So is this, as I see it, maybe correct me if my understanding is not right, but I think the Ledger approach is that it's sort of like that, because the device is certified, you're more comfortable that it is resold by other suppliers in other countries around the world, and perhaps that has also contributed to how Ledger, the devices are now used or sold in 165 countries. Is that part of the thinking there with Ledger and the let's call it the supply chain or the distribution model?
Yeah, completely. I mean, you just said it, so I'm just going to paraphrase what you said, but it is like that. We can basically send our device to any vendor in the world, and they can resell the device without the risk of putting like a malware on the device or doing anything that could in the end harm the user, because you have the genuine check when you because you have multiple things that you have to do with your ledger in order to make it work. And there are multiple ways of verifying that your ledger is genuine. And so there are some attacks that are possible with other vendors that are not possible with Ledger because of the nature of how we build things and because of the secure element. And so therefore, it allows us to have a broad distribution policy, but also it allowed us in 2017 to have manufacturers manufacture our products without being able to inject anything in the product that could harm the user. Well, now that being said, there are very simple attacks that are always possible. So typically, if I get my hands on a ledger, I take I preset the ledger, I write down the 24 words, and then I repackage everything and I send it to a user that is not that doesn't really understand how it works and that doesn't read everything that we say, because normally when you set up your ledger, etc., we always say, you only you can write down your 24 words, like never show them to anyone. But we've seen in the past that people that don't really pay attention to what we write, or can be influenced to either use a product that has already been set up with 24 words that are being sent to them, and or sometimes get a phishing attack where there is a website that's going to say, hey, we are Ledger, and give us your 24 words because we want to reset your device, or there are scam attacks like this that always happen. So the last line of defense is always the user that needs to pay a lot of attention. I think what's very difficult in this market, and what users need to understand, is they need to pay attention. So Ledger is secure, but the process of setting up your Ledger is very important. So you need to take the time. You need to be in a quiet room. You need to, you don't do that in a Starbucks coffee with 20,000 people around you. Like, you need to be at home. You need to be in a secure environment. You need to pay attention to what you do because it is security, and security of your own money is an important thing. So you should treat it as such. And I think this is the shift that needs to happen, because we come from a world where you have your Revolut app, and so you have just a PIN code and you do everything, and and it's all easy, but your money is not yours. It's with Revolut. So this is the old world. In the new world, where your keys are yours and your money is yours, I think it's a fantastic power. But as Spider-Man say, great powers come with great responsibilities, and so therefore you need to be very careful about what you do.
Yeah, no, that's definitely that's the big mindset shift that has to be driven as people come into Bitcoin and learn to. Well, there's no bailouts in Bitcoin. You have to take your full personal responsibility when you do this. Pascal, let's talk a little bit about Ledger Vault. So for those listeners who might be interested to understand more, can you just give an overview on that product?
Sure. I mean, Ledger Vault is a product that we've designed because people were using the nanos in the consumer product, but those people were actually not people. They were like hedge funds or companies, and they were like, okay, but we have governance needs, and we need multi-sig, we need different features that the Ledger Nano and Ledger Live Experience is not offering, and we have enterprise needs. So can you help? And so this is what we've designed for them. So the Ledger Vault is a result of that. And it's basically a product that's been designed for the enterprise, or for financial institutions, that basically allows to secure the private keys and put governance on top of those private keys. So if you have $100 million in Bitcoin, like, the question is who's got access, who can do what. And so there's a complex set of business features that has been developed on top of the interface, where you can sort of divide administrators of the funds from operators of the funds. It's a complex governance system that has been designed for complex environments for the financial institutions.
Right, and so the way that a user would interact with Ledger Vault, then, is there, I presume you can set certain policies on which users can authorize transactions up to this amount, or how many users. Is that basically the model there with Ledger Vault?
Yeah, completely. So you say, for this account and or certain type of transactions, like, if you want to send more than $5 million to an address that is not to an address, then you need 3 out of 4 approval or 2 out of 4 approval. Imagine every business rule that you could have in a financial institution. Basically, those business rules have been implemented into Ledger Vault, and you can sort of hard code them into the hardware. And so, what's interesting there is the hardware not only signs the transaction, the secure hardware signs the transaction, but also enforces the business rules. Because sometimes you would have vendors that say hardware sign the transaction, but actually business rules happen outside of the security. And so therefore the HSMs, the hardware security modules, which is what we use here for hardware security, as being given an instruction from sort of outside the security scheme. And so they're being given an instruction to sign something, so they sign it. They sign it securely, but they don't know that what they received was actually wrong or fraudulent, etc. So with us, has been designed so everything run within the hardware and the secure hardware, and every rule is enforced by the secure hardware.
Right, and in that model, is it like a self-hosted by each business, or is this something that's more hosted by Ledger, if that makes sense?
No, makes complete sense. So right now it's a SaaS product, so software as a service. So HSMs are hosted by Ledger, and what the user have is an interface, the Ledger Vault interface, that is somewhat similar to Ledger Live. And they have also authentificators, so they have a hardware wallet product in their hands to actually validate transactions. But HSMs are hosted by Ledger.
It sounds to me like that product was more like a pull product, if you will. Like companies came to Ledger and saying, "Hey, we want this." I was curious just to think, because there might also be that barrier of trying to, tell or have businesses think about, oh, this is like a new world for us. Like we don't understand this. How do we get across the line in terms of actually holding some of these? Holding Bitcoin as well. Was that a difficult sort of conversation, or were those difficult conversations for you to have?
But it's the enterprise side is funny because it's a bit like the consumer side. So the consumer newbie that doesn't really get it goes on Coinbase. That's it's great service. Well, it doesn't really fulfill the promise of Bitcoin, but hey, I just want to buy one Bitcoin, and I go on Coinbase, and it's easy, and voila, it's done. And so I would say that. Some financial institutions they don't want the hassle of holding the coin. They don't want the private keys. They don't want all of that. They just want exposure to an asset class. And so therefore they're happy to go with a custodian. So they buy the coin, but they trust a custodian with it. And that's okay, because a lot of our clients that use the Ledger technology are custodians. So, if we talk to someone and they say, no, but I don't want to hold my private keys, I just want to give my money to someone, then we refer them to some of our partners that are custodians and have been designed for and have a product and have a service that is designed for this. I have to say also that in the financial institution world, a custodian don't just hold the money. Actually, custodian gives you also many other services that sometimes you need as a hedge fund, etc. And so our technology, of course, solves some of the issues about like security, etc. But like we're not a custodian ourselves. We're only a technology player. So there are certain services that if you want to have them, you have to use a third party anyways. But some of the players actually are holding their keys. I mean, if you think about the big players in the industry, they have a security infrastructure. They're holding their keys. They do a lot of things right now. But this financial institution world is very interesting because it's moving with regulation. And so whether exchanges typically will still be allowed to keep the coins with them in the future and act as a de facto custodian, that's a big question right now. It's probably not going to be the case. It's not the case in the regular financial world, so it probably won't be the case in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency world, but all this is forming. Whatever happened, we are a technology backbone. We're a technology player, and we only provide technology. So whether we provide technology to custodians that then take the deposit of the coins for third parties, or that we provide technology to any hedge fund, bank, etc., that want to have their own coins and their own private keys, we will provide the tech.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really fascinating to think about where it all goes in terms of the structure as Bitcoin grows up, so to speak. Do you have any thoughts on what you think happens as Bitcoin grows up?
I think Bitcoin is growing up right now. I mean, if you see what's happening, because people look at the price and the market cap, and I've seen so many tweets recently to say, oh, give me faith that Bitcoin is going to work, because right now with the price dipping, I feel it's a problem. Actually, I don't feel it's a problem for people that are sort of losing hope of faith because of price evolution. I would say there's so much that's being built in 19 and so much that is being built right now and into 2020, especially in the from financial institutions. I mean, big financial institutions are moving into the game. But we have to be realistic. The infrastructure that is needed for an asset class to emerge is not completely there yet. I mean, in terms of security, it's not completely there. In terms of features, it's not completely there, et cetera, et cetera. But 2020 will be, I think, a big year, because there will be many announcements now that will come from very large financial institutions that are moving into Bitcoin. They're not moving into because they're moving into other form of tokenization of asset like STOs, et cetera, and that's all good, and that's another wave, but and that's a wave that will be beneficial to the industry. But I'm really talking about Bitcoin. Financial institutions are moving into Bitcoin. 19 was an infrastructure play. I mean, we know the names like Fidelity and Backed and CME, etc. These are big guys, and they've all announced, and they're all doing something in 19, and they announced they'll do bigger in 20. So, the price right now is irrelevant. The market cap right now is irrelevant, because at some point it will shoot through the roof, and those pieces that were installed in 19 will thrive in 2021, and this is the beginning of a big asset class, I think.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Pascal, do you have any parting thoughts or advice for the listeners out there in terms of securing their Bitcoins, or anything you think they should think about?
Well, number one, I would like to say that in terms of R&D for us in 20, we have a big focus on Bitcoin. And so, if you want to talk about this with Nicolas Bacca, our Chief Innovation Officer, I think it will be a next logical step of the discussion with Ledger, because, Bitcoin is the dominant coin, is the biggest community. And so therefore, for us, our plans in 2020, we have Bitcoin like top of mind, and many things that we want to do there. When we touch base on several topics here already with you, but I think Nicolas will actually do the job. So, but yeah, that's that. And I think the message for us and what we're going to do is we're going to keep on building. And I think it's very important that companies keep on building great products, that we keep on interacting with our users. So we probably will want to interact more with users in 2020, whether they're advanced or newbies, etc., just to better understand how to design our products and what's good for the market. And the general message is, not your keys, not your coins. Do your own security, but be very mindful when you do your security. And Ledger is here to help. As a target for the company in 2020, the number one target is love our customers. So we'll try to do better than what we've done in 19. Always try to improve. We have a great customer success team. We have a great innovation team. So we'll just try to improve our game, do better, and serve our communities better.
Yeah, look, thank you very much, Pascal. And like I said, I grilled you a bit on some of these points, but I do believe Ledger is a leading company. I hold, I have some Ledger products. I use Ledger products as well. So thanks for that, and for a lot of the work that you and your team, very, very sharp and very security focused minded team. So I think there's good work being done there. But yeah, certainly, as we mentioned, there's always room for improvement. But we'll be looking forward to that, and we'll be happy to host some other members from your team on the show, and we can have some in-depth conversation with them. But for now, I think we'll leave it with that. But look, just before we let you go, can you just let the listeners know where to find you and where they can find Ledger?
Oh, me, they can find me. My email is pascal@ledger.com or fr. Anyone can send me an email. Happy to reply if it's relevant. And if I don't have time or not relevant, then I'm sorry, I don't reply, because I'm receiving too many messages already. But if you want to shoot me anything, pascal@ledger.fr. I'm usually based in Paris. Actually, the R&D team, engineering team is based in Paris, but I travel often to the US, New York or San Francisco, and to Hong Kong, where we're based, Hong Kong and Singapore for Asia. So hit me up, and happy to meet with people.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I hope you got some value out of that interview, and I will be hosting some other team members from Ledger on in future to go a little bit further into detail on some of those technical components we touched on in the interview. So remember, if you enjoy the show, make sure you leave me a review. You can support me by leaving a review on Apple iTunes. You can share it on social media, forums, chat groups, and I've also got a Patreon group for those people who want to be part of a private SLP supporters chat group. If you want to advertise on the show, you can email me, stefanlivera@pm.me. Don't forget, there's show notes and episode transcript on my website as always. The website is stefanlivera.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the Citadels.